Syria. The name itself evokes images of ancient cities, bustling souks and the scent of spices on a warm desert wind. It is a land rich in history, where the echoes of ancient civilizations still whisper through the ruins. From the majestic ruins of Palmyra to the vibrant streets of Damascus, Syria was once a beacon of culture and heritage in the Middle East. But for over a decade, Syria has been synonymous with conflict, a place where bombs replace birdsong and fear hangs heavy in the air. The once bustling markets are now silent, and the ancient streets are filled with the rubble of war. The sounds of laughter and daily life have been replaced by the haunting echoes of explosions and gunfire. For 13 long years, war has ravaged this once beautiful land. The conflict has left no corner of Syria untouched, from the bustling cities to the quiet countryside. The scars of war are visible everywhere, in the bombed-out buildings, the desolate streets, and the barren fields. Millions have fled their homes, seeking refuge in distant lands. The refugee crisis has become one of the largest in modern history, with families torn apart and communities scattered across the globe. The journey to safety is fraught with danger, and many have perished along the way. Those who remain face daily struggles for survival, their lives shattered by a conflict that seems to have no end. They scavenge for food and water, rebuild their homes with whatever materials they can find, and try to maintain a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. The Syrian people have endured unimaginable suffering. Children have grown up knowing nothing but war, and the elderly have seen their entire lives' work reduced to rubble. The emotional and psychological toll is immense, with countless lives forever changed by the trauma of conflict. They've witnessed the destruction of their homes, schools, and hospitals. Institutions that once provided education, healthcare, and community support are now in ruins, leaving a void that is difficult to fill. The loss of these essential services has made daily life even more challenging for those who remain. They've lost loved ones, their lives torn apart by violence and displacement. The grief is palpable, with families mourning the loss of parents, siblings, and children. The pain of separation and the uncertainty of the future weigh heavily on their hearts. Yet, amidst the ruins, a flicker of hope remained. The resilience of the Syrian people is remarkable, as they come together to support one another and rebuild their communities. Small acts of kindness and solidarity provide a glimmer of light in the darkness. After years of brutal fighting, a fragile ceasefire offered a glimmer of peace. The hope for a better future began to take root, with efforts to rebuild and restore what had been lost. The international community also played a role, providing aid and support to help Syria recover. But that hope, like so many others, was soon to be tested. The ceasefire was fragile, and the underlying tensions remained unresolved. The return of violence shattered the fragile peace, leaving the Syrian people once again caught in the crossfire. The cycle of conflict and suffering continues, but the spirit of the Syrian people endures, holding on to the hope that one day, peace will prevail. February 6, 2023. A date that will forever be etched in the annals of history, marked by an unimaginable tragedy. A date etched in sorrow, a day when countless lives were shattered in an instant. The air was thick with grief as people mourned the loss of their loved ones. A day when nature's fury compounded Syria's agony. The stormy skies seemed to mirror the turmoil on the ground as lightning struck and the earth trembled. A devastating earthquake, one of the strongest to hit the region in centuries, struck southern Turkey and northern Syria. The ground shook with a ferocity that left buildings crumbling and lives in disarray. Buildings crumbled, burying families beneath tons of rubble. Rescue workers toiled day and night digging through the debris in a desperate search for survivors. The death toll soared, reaching into the tens of thousands. The sight of mass graves and endless funeral processions painted a grim picture of the catastrophe. The earthquakes were a cruel blow to a nation already on its knees. Syria, a country ravaged by years of conflict, now faced an additional unimaginable burden. Hospitals, already overwhelmed by the casualties of war, struggled to cope with the influx of injured. Makeshift clinics sprang up, but resources were scarce and the need was overwhelming. Tens of thousands were left homeless, forced to seek shelter in makeshift camps. Families huddled in tents, exposed to the elements and the ever-present threat of disease. The disaster deepened the humanitarian crisis, pushing Syria to the brink. Humanitarian aid workers did their best to distribute supplies, but the lines of people waiting for aid seemed endless. The resilience of the human spirit was tested as hope crumbled under the weight of despair. Amidst the despair and devastation, a new wave of violence erupted. In October 2024, the Syrian opposition, largely quiet since the 2020 ceasefire, launched a surprise offensive in the north. Their target, Aleppo, a city that has become a tragic symbol of the conflict's brutality. Opposition fighters, led by the powerful Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, stormed government positions, capturing key towns and villages. The fighting raged for days, sending shockwaves through the region. The front lines, dormant for years, were suddenly ablaze, the fragile peace shattered by the roar of gunfire and the thud of exploding shells. The Syrian conflict is often described as a civil war, a battle between a government and its people. But the reality is far more complex. Syria has become a chessboard, a battleground where regional and global powers wage proxy wars, their interests intertwined with the fate of the Syrian people. Russia, Iran, the United States, Israel, each player pursues its own agenda, their actions fueling the flames of conflict. Their involvement has transformed a local uprising into a regional conflagration, a tangled web of alliances and rivalries with devastating consequences for Syria and its people. Section 5, Russia, the bear's heavy paw. Russia, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, entered the Syrian fray in 2015. Their stated goal to prop up the beleaguered regime of Bashar al-Assad, a longtime ally. Russian airstrikes, often indiscriminate in their targeting, rained down on rebel-held areas, killing and displacing countless civilians. Russia's intervention turned the tide of the war in Assad's favor. With Russian air power at their disposal, Syrian government forces were able to recapture lost territory and solidify their grip on power. But Russia's involvement came at a heavy cost, further inflaming the conflict and deepening the humanitarian crisis. Section 6, Iran, a web of proxies. Iran, a Shia powerhouse, has long sought to expand its influence in the region. Syria, with its predominantly Alawite population, an offshoot of Shia Islam, provided a strategic foothold. Iran has poured billions of dollars into propping up the Assad regime, providing military advisors, weapons, and funding to a network of Shia militias fighting alongside Syrian government forces. Iran's involvement in Syria is driven by a complex web of motivations, countering Sunni rivals like Saudi Arabia, securing a land corridor to Lebanon, and bolstering its regional standing. But their actions have had a destabilizing effect, exacerbating sectarian tensions and fueling the cycle of violence. Section 7, Israel and the U.S. shadows in the wings. Israel too has played a role in the Syrian conflict, albeit a more clandestine one. Concerned by Iran's growing influence on its northern border, Israel has launched hundreds of airstrikes inside Syria, targeting Iranian military installations, weapons convoys, and Hezbollah positions. The United States, while less directly involved, has provided limited military support to certain rebel groups opposed to Assad. However, their efforts have been criticized as being too little, too late, and often hampered by shifting priorities and a reluctance to become bogged down in another Middle Eastern quagmire. Section 8, A Million Voices Cry Out, the Human Cost. Lost in the geopolitical maneuvering, the strategic calculations, and the power struggles are the voices of ordinary Syrians. Their lives have been upended, their futures shattered by a conflict that seems to have no end in sight. Over 500,000 Syrians have been killed, victims of bombs, bullets, and starvation. Millions more have been displaced, their homes reduced to rubble, their dreams turned to ash. They are the forgotten victims of this brutal war, their stories a testament to the human cost of conflict. Section 9, A Plea for Peace, the Only Way Forward. The Syrian conflict is a tragedy of epic proportions, a devastating chapter in modern history that has left an indelible mark on the world. The once vibrant cities now lie in ruins, and the echoes of war reverberate through the lives of millions. It serves as a cautionary tale of what happens when internal divisions are exploited by external actors, when diplomacy fails to bridge the gaps, and when the language of violence becomes the norm. The conflict has torn apart families, communities, and the very fabric of society. The images of armed conflict and civilian casualties are a stark reminder of the human cost of war. The suffering endured by the Syrian people is unimaginable, and the scars left behind will take generations to heal. But even amidst the ruins, there is hope. The resilience of the Syrian people shines through as they continue to smile, rebuild, and hold on to the hope for a better future. Their spirit is unbroken, and their determination to rise from the ashes is inspiring. The international community must work together to find a political solution, one that addresses the legitimate grievances of the Syrian people, while ensuring accountability for the atrocities committed. It is a complex and challenging task, but it is the only way forward. The voices of the Syrian people must be heard. Their grievances, their pain, and their hopes for the future must be at the forefront of any peace process. Community meetings and dialogues are essential in building trust and understanding. Accountability for the war crimes committed is crucial. Justice must be served to ensure that those responsible for the atrocities face the consequences of their actions. This is not just about retribution, but about healing and reconciliation. Humanitarian aid must reach those in need, providing food, shelter, and medical care to those who have suffered so much. The international community must come together to support the relief efforts and ensure that aid reaches the most vulnerable. The provision of food and shelter is essential for survival, but it is also a symbol of hope. It shows that the world has not forgotten the Syrian people, and that there is a collective effort to help them rebuild their lives. Medical care is critical in addressing the physical and psychological wounds of war. Doctors and healthcare workers are on the front lines, providing life-saving treatment and support to those in need. The cycle of violence must end. The future of Syria and the hope for a brighter tomorrow depend on it. Peace talks and ceasefire agreements are steps in the right direction, but they must be followed by concrete actions and sustained efforts. The children of Syria, with their hopeful expressions, are the future. They deserve a chance to grow up in a world free from the horrors of war. The families rebuilding their lives amidst the ruins are a testament to the enduring human spirit. Together we can help them create a brighter tomorrow.